Namaste! Welcome to Quick Wisdom with Bliss. My name is Bliss. Meow! And this is my cute little furball friend, Joy. Spirituality is everywhere. In the air we breathe, in nature all around us, and even written into our very DNA. We are energy, and together as energy, we're all connected. We're all one. United as one, we are here on the stage of life to love and help each other live the best we can. Now, I know you've come today to learn about a very special topic, so let's put on our fun caps and get started on this sacred exploration. This is Quick Wisdom with Bliss. Mantra. Welcome to another edition of Quick Wisdom with Bliss. I'm, you guessed it, Bliss. And joining me as always is my faithful fuzzy friend, Joy. Today we're going to teach you all about mantras and how sometimes a few simple words can change your life for the better and maybe even make it easier. You ready, Joy? Let's get cracking. A mantra can be lots of different things, such as a numinous sound, a sacred utterance, a syllable, a phoneme, or words, or a group of words in Sanskrit that are believed by practitioners to have spiritual and/or psychological powers. Some mantras have a syntactic structure and very literal meaning, while others don't. Some of the earliest mantras were created in Vedic Sanskrit in India and are at the very least 3,000 years old. Mantras are now present in many schools of Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, and Sikhism. In the Japanese Shingon tradition, the word Shingon itself means mantra. Similar chants, hymns, compositions, antiphons, and concepts can be found in Taoism, Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and many other places. The structure, use, importance, function, and types of mantras can change according to the school and philosophy of Buddhism and Hinduism. Mantras have an important role in Tantra. In the Tantric school, mantras are thought to be a sacred formula and an extremely personal ritual that is effective only after initiation. In other schools of Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, or Sikhism, initiation isn't a requirement. Mantras can come in numerous forms, including verses from the Rig Veda and Saman, which are musical chants from the Samaveda. This kind of mantra is usually a melodic, mathematically structured meter that is thought to be resonant with numinous qualities. At its simplest, the word Om or Om can serve as a mantra. In more sophisticated forms, mantras are melodic phrases with highly spiritual interpretations, like a human longing for reality, truth, immortality, light, love, peace, knowledge, and action. Some mantras without a literal meaning are spiritually meaningful and musically uplifting. In Sanskrit, the Amarkosa lists the two main elements of the word mantra, the dhatu, meaning the seed, and the krit, pratyaya, which means protected or secret speech. The krit pratyaya gan expresses either karma, meaning object, or bhava, meaning the state or act of the activity itself. Therefore, a mantra is the speaking of a protected or secret sound. The Sanskrit word mantra comes from the root man, to think. What's that, Joy? Meow? How long have mantras been in use? That's a great question. Scholars believe the use of mantras began before 1000 BC by the Middle Vedic period, taking place from 1000 BC to 500 BC. Mantras in Hinduism have developed into a blend of both science and art. According to linguistic scholar and author Bernfried Sklarath, the concept of Satya's mantras is found in Indo-Iranian Yasna 31.6 and the Rig Veda, where it is believed to be structured thought in conformity with the reality or poetic religious formulas that are commonly associated with inherent fulfillment. Wow! Isn't the world magical? It's always telling us something if we take the time to listen. Now, listen to this! Mantras aren't unique to Hinduism, nor are they unique to other Indian religions like Buddhism. Similar creative constructs have developed in Western and Asian traditions as well. According to department founder and emeritus professor of philosophy and Southeast Asian studies at the University of California, Berkeley, Fritz-style mantras may be older than language itself. Believe it or not, Joy, there's no generally accepted definition of the word mantra. French Indologist Louis Renaud has defined mantra as a thought. French Indologists specializing in Kashmir Shaivism, Tantra, and Buddhism, Lillian Silburn, maintains that mantras are structured formulae of thoughts. Farquhar has concluded that mantras are a religious thought, sacred utterance, prayer, but also believed to be a weapon or spell of supernatural power. German Indologist and linguistic Heinrich Robert Zimmer defines mantra as a verbal instrument to create something in one's mind. Swami Vedabharati says that mantra, when it's being used in the context of the Tantric school of Hinduism, is a mixture of combined quasi and genuine morphemes that are arranged in ordinary patterns that are based upon codified esoteric traditions that have been passed on from a guru to a disciple through authorized initiation. According to Jan Ganda, a widely cited scholar of Indian mantras, mantra is a general name for the formulas, verses, or sequences of words in prose which are home to praise that are believed to have a magical, religious, or spiritual efficiency, that are meditated upon, muttered, recited, or sung in a ritual. These words are collected in the methodically arranged ancient texts of Hinduism. Ganda maintains that there are no universally applicable uniform definitions of mantra because mantras are used in different religions and within each religion in different schools of philosophy. For example, in some schools of Hinduism, a mantra is a sakti, meaning power to the devotee in the form of expressed and formulated thought. Stahl further clarifies that mantras aren't rituals at all. They are what is recited or chanted during a ritual. In the Oxford Living Dictionary, a mantra is defined as a word or sound repeated to aid concentration in meditation. Cambridge Dictionary is home to two different definitions. Definition 1 refers to Buddhism and Hinduism, a word or sound that is believed to have special spiritual power. The second one is a bit more general, a word or phrase that is often repeated and expresses a particularly strong belief. For example, a football team can choose individual words to become their own mantra. Scholars have long disagreed on the definition of mantras and whether or not they are instruments of mind, as implied by the etymological origin of the word mantra. One school thinks mantras are mostly meaningless constructs of sound, while another holds them to be mostly comprised of the meaningful linguistic instruments of mind. Both schools agree that mantras have a well-designed mathematical precision in their construction that is melodic. Their influence on the listener as well as the reciter is similar to that which has been observed by people around the world who listen to instrumental music. Stahl puts forth a non-linguistic view of mantras. He believes that verse mantras are metered and harmonized to mathematical precision, which resonate. However, a lot of them are little more than just a hodgepodge of meaningless constructs, like those that are found in folk music from around the world. Stahl warns that there are a lot of mantras that can be translated, which do have spiritual meanings and philosophical themes that are central to Hinduism. However, that doesn't mean all mantras possess a literal meaning. He goes on to say that even when mantras don't have literal meanings, they do set a tone and ambiance in the ritual as they are recited. Therefore, they have a straightforward and uncontroversial ritualistic meaning. The sounds may sometimes lack literal meaning, but they can still have an effect. Stahl says that mantras can be compared to bird songs in that they have power to communicate, yet they do not have an overtly literal meaning. On that summon category of Hindu mantras which Stahl illustrated as the areas of Bach's oratorios and other European classics, he notes that these mantras have musical structure, but they are almost always completely different from anything in the syntax of natural languages. Mantras are both literally meaningless and musically meaningful to Stahl. The summon chant mantras were passed down from one Hindu generation to next, and have been done so verbally for over 1,000 years, but were never written. Stahl suggests that this feat was made possible by the strict mathematical principles that are used in constructing mantras. These summon chant mantras are for the most part meaningless and cannot be literally translated as Sanskrit or any Indian language. However, they are beautiful in their variations, resonant themes, distribution, and inversions. The mantras serve to draw the devotee in. Stahl isn't the first person to see Hindu mantras in this way. The ancient Hindu Vedic ritualist Kautsa was one of the earliest scholars to note that mantras are meaningless and that their function is phonetic and syntactic, not semantic. What do you think about that, Joy? You're so cute, Joy. I love you. Sorry, lost in cuteness. Let's continue. Professor of Religious Studies at Southern Methodist University, Harvey Alper, and other present mantras from the linguistic point of view admit that Stahl's observations surrounding mantras containing bits and pieces of meaningless jargon is relevant, but they also question what text or language doesn't. The existence of an abracadabra-like bit doesn't exactly imply that the entire work is meaningless. Alper lists plenty of mantras that have moral principles, philosophical themes, a call to virtuous life, and even mundane petitions. He maintains that, from a set of millions of mantras, the devotee is the one that chooses some mantras voluntarily, thereby expressing that speaker's intention, and the audience for that mantra is that speaker's chosen spiritual entity. Mantras can be the language of spiritual expression, they can be used as religious instruments, and at the end of the day, that's what matters the most to the devotee. A mantra conjures a feeling in the person who is practicing it. It mesmerizes, has an emotive, numinous effect, it defies expression, and it creates sensations that are by definition private, and at the heart of all spiritual phenomena and religions. Okay, Joy, it's time to dive into the Hindu histories of the mantra. According to Stahl, in the early Vedic period, Vedic poets were fascinated by the inspirational power of metered verses, poems, and music. They referred to them with the root of di, which evolved into dhyana, meaning meditation of Hinduism, and the language used to start and help this process manifested as a mantra. By the Middle Vedic period, which took place from 1000 BC to 500 BC, mantras were established from all Vedic compositions. During the Hindu epics period and after, mantras grew in many ways and changed to meet the needs and passions of the many schools of Hinduism. Mantras took a center stage in the Tantric schools, which posited that each mantra, also known as Vijas, is a deity. And it is this distinct school of Hinduism and each mantra is a deity reasoning that led to the popular belief that many Hindus have tens of millions of gods. One function of mantras is to solemnize and ratify rituals. Each mantra in Vedic rituals is coupled with an act. According to the Apastamba Srauta Sutra, which ritualistic act comes with one mantra, unless the sutra explicitly reads that one act can correspond to several mantras. According to Ganda and others who share her beliefs, there is a connection and rationale between a Vedic mantra and each Vedic ritual act that comes with it. In these cases, mantras performed the function of an instrument of ritual efficacy for the priest and a tool of instruction for a ritual act for others. Over the years, as the epics and Puranas were created, the concepts of virtues, worship, and spirituality evolved in Hinduism. Religions like Buddhism and Jainism branched off and new schools were established, each continuing to advance and refine its own mantras. Alper suggests that in Hinduism, the job of mantra shifted from the quotidian to redemptive. That means that in Vedic times, mantras were recited with a practical, quotidian goal as their intention, like requesting a god's help in the discovery of a cure of illness, lost cattle, embarking on a journey away from home, or even succeeding in a competitive sport. The literal translation of Vedic mantras denotes that the function of a mantra, in these cases, was to cope with the dilemmas and uncertainties of daily life. In later periods of Hinduism, mantras were repeated with a transcendental redemptive goal as their intention, such as forgiveness for bad karma, escape from the cycle of life and rebirth, and experiencing a spiritual connection with a deity. The role of mantras in these cases was a means to cope with the human condition as a whole. According to Alper, spiritual mantras that are redemptive in nature open the door for mantras where every part needn't have a literal meaning. However, together their resonance and musical quality can assist the transcendental spiritual process. Using Siva Sutra mantras as an example, Alpert goes on to explain that Hindu mantras have philosophical themes and are metaphorical with a meaning and social dimension. That means they are an instrument of thought as well as a spiritual language. Stahl suggests that Hindu mantras can be spoken aloud. Anirukta, meaning not enunciated, Apamsu, meaning inaudible, or Manasa, meaning not spoken but recited in the mind. In ritualistic use, mantras are frequently silent instruments that are used to aid a devotee into meditation. Joy, are you ready to learn more? That's what I thought. Here we go. Blessings of knowledge. Let these facts heal us with understanding. One of Joy's basic mantras is her steady purr. But for people, the most basic mantra is Om. In Hinduism, Om is known as the Pranava mantra, which means the source of all mantras. The Hindu philosophy behind Om is the idea that both before and beyond existence is only a single reality. Brahman and the first manifestations of Brahman is expressed as Om. For this reason, Om is considered to be a foundational idea and reminder, and therefore is prefixed and suffixed to all Hindu prayers. While some mantras may invoke individual principles or gods, fundamental mantras such as the Gayatri mantra, the Shanti mantra, and others all ultimately focus on the one reality. The universe in the Tantric school is sound, The Supreme, also known as Para, brings forth existence through the word, also known as Shabda. Creation is comprised of vibrations at various amplitudes and frequencies that give rise to the world's phenomena. Gudrun Bohnaman, professor of Sanskrit and Indic religions, notes that deity mantras are an important part of the Tantric compendia. The Tantric mantras change in their length and structure. Mala mantras are mantras that have a large number of syllables. Unlike bija mantras, which are one-syllabled, typically ending in anusvara, which is a simple nasal sound, these come from the name of a deity. An example, Ganesha yields Gam and Durga yields Dum. Bija mantras are prefixed and appended to other mantras as a means of creating complex mantras. In the Tantric school, these mantras are thought to have supernatural powers, and they are transmitted by a preceptor to a disciple in an initiation ritual. Tantric mantras have found a significant audience and adaptations in Hindu Southeast Asia, medieval India, and numerous Asian countries with Buddhism. Ramesh Chandra Majumdar, a historian and professor of Indian history, alongside other scholars, suggest that mantras are central to the Tantric school and have many functions, from emancipating and initiating a Tantric devotee to honoring expressed forms of the divine, from allowing heightened energy in the male and the female to getting psychological, supernormal, and spiritual power. From stopping evil influences to exorcising demons, and a lot more, these declared functions and other features of the Tantric mantra are the subject of much controversy for scholars. The use of Tantra is not unique to Hinduism, as it can also be found in Buddhist practices both outside and inside India. Mantra japa is the practice of constantly saying the same mantra for an auspicious number of times, the most popular number of times being 108, but sometimes it can just be 5, 10, 28, or even 1008. Japa can be found in the personal prayers or the meditative efforts of some Hindus, as well during formal group prayers that are known as puja. Japa is helped by malas, which are bead necklaces that have 108 beads and a head bead that is sometimes referred to as the meru or guru bead. The devotee will use their fingers to count each bead as they repeat their chosen mantra. Once they reach 108 repetitions, if they wish to go on with another cycle of mantras, the follower turns the mala around without crossing the head bead. They can then repeat the cycle. Japa yajna is thought to be the most effective if the mantra is repeated silently in one's mind, or as it's known, manasa. According to this school, any shloka that appears in holy Hindu texts, such as the Upanishads, Vedas, Yoga Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, even the Mahabharata, Durga Saptashati, Ramayana, or Chandi, is a mantra. Therefore, it can act as a part of the japa and repeated as a means to obtain a spiritual effect. The Dharma Sastra believes Gayatri mantra, that comes from Rig Veda verse 3.62.10, and the Purusa Sukta mantra from Rig Veda verse 10.90 are among the most conducive mantras for japa at both sunrise and sunset. It is believed to purify the spirit and the mind. Aside from Shiva Sutras, which can be traced back to Shiva's Tandava dance, the Shiva Sutras of Vasugupta are a bevy of 77 pearls of wisdom, which help to create the very foundation of the tradition of spiritual mysticism that is known as Kashmir Shaivism. They are ascribed to the sage Vasugupta of the 9th century CE, Sambhavoyapaya, Saktopaya, and Anavopaya are the primary subdivisions, 3 means of obtaining God consciousness, of which the most used technique of Saktopaya is a mantra. However, mantra in this context doesn't mean muttering or incantation of some kind of a sacred formula. The term mantra is used here in its original signification. It is one that saves one by wandering over the light of supreme consciousness is a mantra. The divine supreme I consciousness is the big daddy of all the mantras. Deha or body has been equated to wood. Mantra has been equated to arani, a piece of wood that is used for kindling fire by friction. Prana has been equated to fire. When prana is stoked by means of a mantra used as arani, fire in the guise of udana rises susmana. And then, just like fire rises out of kindled flame to be dissolved in the sky, so also Atma, like a flame having burned down the fuel of the body, gets absorbed in Shiva. Hey Joy, why are you so quiet all of a sudden? Oh, I get it. You're practicing TM. Oh yeah, I suppose I should tell you all about that too. That is quick wisdom if you ask me. What do you think, Joy? Well said, Joy. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, are you ready to get deeper into this? Okay then. The Transcendental Meditation Technique, also known as TM for short, uses mantras that are assigned to the practitioner to be used as thought sound only, not chanted aloud without connection to any meaning or idea. The spiritual exercises of Surat Shabda Yoga include Simran, meaning repetition, particularly silent repetition of a mantra given at initiation. Dhyan, meaning concentration, viewing or contemplation, particularly on the inner master, and Bhajan, meaning listening to the inner sounds of the Shabda or the Shabda master. Repetition of a mantram or mantra, some holy name, is point 2 in the 8-point passage meditation program that is taught by an Indian-born spiritual teacher, author, and translator and interpreter of Indian religious texts by the name of Eknath Aswaran, recommends using a mantram borrowed from a faith-based tradition, West or East. The mantram is to be repeated regularly throughout the day during appropriate moments. This technique of mantram repetition and the larger program was developed for use in any major faith tradition or outside all traditions. Aswaran's method of mantram recurrence has been on the subjects of the scientific research conducted at the San Diego Veterans Administration. It is believed to have health benefits, which include dealing with stress and reducing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The idea of mantras in Jainism isn't focused on material aspects. Instead, it usually deals with looking for forgiveness or praising arihants and gods like Padmavati, Nakoda, Sarasvati, Manibhadra, Lakshmi, and many others. However, some mantras are thought to boost a person's intellect, fame, prosperity, or wealth. There are an abundance of mantras in Jainism, most of which are in Prakrit or Sanskrit, but over last several centuries, several have been composed in Gujarati or Hindi languages. Mantras can either be sung or chanted. You can recite a mantra either out loud or by simply moving your lips wordlessly. You can even recite it in total silence by thinking of it over and over. Some examples of Jain mantras are Uvasagaharam Stotra, Bhakthamara Stotra. However, the greatest is said to be the Navkar mantra or the Namakar. The Navkar mantra literally translates to 9-line mantra. This is an essential mantra in Jainism. The first 5 lines are made up of salutations to many different sanctified souls, and the last 4 lines are explanatory in nature, meaning that they highlight the greatness and the benefits of this mantra. As part of their samayika and daily prayers, Jains repeat the following Iryavahi Sutra in Prakrit, seeking the forgiveness of literally all creatures while they are involved in their routine activities. May you, O revered one, voluntarily permit me. I would like to confess my sinful acts committed while walking. I honor your permission. I desire to absolve myself of the sinful acts by confessing them. I seek forgiveness from all those living beings which I may have tortured while walking, coming, and going, treading on a living organism, seeds, green grass, dewdrops, anthills, moss, live water, live earth, spider webs, and others. I seek forgiveness from all these living beings, be they 1 sensed, 2 sensed, 3 sensed, 4 sensed, or 5 sensed, which I may have kicked, covered with dust, rubbed with earth, collided with other, turned upside down, tormented, frightened, shifted from one place to another, or killed and deprived them of their lives. By confessing, may I be absolved of all of these sins. The usage of a mantra or the repeating of particular phrases in Pali is an extremely common type of meditation in the Theravada tradition. Easy mantras use the repetition of the Buddha's name, Buddho, as Buddho. However, the actual title and not a name, sometimes the words Dhamma or the Sangha, are used by the community as mantra words. Some kinds of mantras are specifically aimed towards feeding a loving kindness. Other mantras direct attention toward the process of changes by repeating the Pali phrase, which means everything changes. Mantras are even used to create calmness by using phrases that could be translated as simply saying, "Let go." Frequently, the practice of mantra practice is used in conjunction with breathing meditation. That way, a devotee who recites a mantra at the same time with in-breath and out-breath breathing can help develop concentration and tranquility. Mantra meditation is particularly popular with the lay people. As with many of the usual concentration exercises, it can be employed simply to the mind, or it can be the foundation for an insight practice in which the mantra becomes the primary focus of observation of how life happens. It can even aid in letting go and surrendering. Yes, that's right, Joy. Different cultures all over the world practice their mantras in a variety of different ways. Good girl. Here's the treat for ya. The Buddha mantra is common in the Thai forest tradition and was explained by an influential teacher of the Buddha Dhamma and a founder of 2 major monasteries in the Thai forest tradition named Ajahn Chah and his students. Another super popular mantra in Thai Buddhism is Sama Araham, and it refers to the Buddha who has perfectly, also known as Sama, attained perfection in the Buddhist sense, which is also known as Araham, used in Dhammakaya meditation. These fun facts fill my heart with happiness. I love learning, don't you? I hope these spiritual concepts are becoming clear. Let's keep learning. In the Tantric Theravada tradition of Southeast Asia, mantras are central to their method of meditation. Popular mantras in this tradition include Namo Buddhaya, or homage to the Buddha, and Araham, meaning worthy one. In Buddhism in China and Vietnam, 10 small mantras were completed by a monk named Yulin, who was a teacher of the Shunji Emperor for nuns, monks, and laity for them to chant in the morning. Alongside the 10 mantras, he can also find the Shurangama mantra or the Shurangama, the Great Compassion mantra, the Heart Sutra, and many additional types of Nyanpho, which are also chanted. The Shurangama mantra may be the longest mantra. There are Thai Buddhist amulet kappa, that is mantras to be recited while holding an amulet. Kukai, who lived from 774 until 835, a noted Buddhist monk, advanced a general theory of language based on his analysis of two forms of Buddhist ritual language, Dharani and mantra. Mantra is regulated to esoteric Buddhist practice, and Dharani can be found in both esoteric and exoteric rituals. For instance, Dharanis can be found in the Heart Sutra. The term Shingon is the Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese transcription of the Sanskrit word mantra. The word Dharani comes from a Sanskrit root that means to hold or maintain. Ryuichi Abe advocated that it is ordinarily comprehended as a mnemonic device that can encapsulate the true meaning of a section or even an entire chapter of a sutra. Dharanis are also believed to protect the devotee who chants them from evil influences and possible calamities. The term mantra is traditionally said to be derived from two roots, man, to think, and the action-oriented suffix, tra. Thus, a mantra can be considered to be a linguistic device for deepening one's thought, or in the Buddhist context, for developing the enlightened mind. They have also been used as magic spells for purposes such as attaining wealth and long life, and eliminating enemies. In daily living, many thought the pronunciation of the mantra was not important to take its effect, and the expected effect may not happen because of fixed karma, or because there appears a better way to solve the situation. The distinction between Dharani and mantra is hard to make. We can say that all mantras are Dharanis, but that not all Dharanis are mantras. Mantras do tend to be shorter. Both tend to contain some unintelligible phonic fragments, such as om or hum, which is perhaps why some people consider them to be essentially meaningless. Kukai made mantra a special class of Dharani, which showed that every syllable of a Dharani was a manifestation of the true nature of reality. In Buddhist terms, that all sound is a manifestation of Shunyata, or emptiness of self-nature. Thus, rather than being devoid of meaning, Kukai suggests that Dharanis are in fact saturated with meaning. Every syllable is symbolic on multiple levels. One of Kukai's distinctive contributions was to take this symbolic association even further by saying that there is no essential difference between the syllables of mantras and sacred texts, and those of ordinary language. If one understood the workings of mantra, then any sounds could be a representative of ultimate reality. The emphasis on sounds was one of the drivers for Kukai's championing of the phonetic writing system, the kana, which was adopted in Japan around the time of Kukai. He's generally credited with the invention of the kana, but there is apparently some doubt about this story amongst scholars. This mantra-based theory of language had a powerful effect on Japanese thought and society, which up until Kukai's time had been dominated by imported Chinese culture of thought, particularly in the form of the classical Chinese language, which was used in the court and amongst the illiterate, and Confucianism, which was the dominant political ideology. In particular, Kukai was able to use this new theory of language to create links between indigenous Japanese culture and Buddhism. For instance, he made a link between the Buddha Mahavairokkana and the Shinto sun goddess Amaterasu. Since the emperors were thought to be descended from of Amaterasu, Kukai had found a powerful connection here that linked the emperors with the Buddha, and also in finding a way to integrate Shinto with Buddhism, something that had not happened with Confucianism. Buddhism then became essentially an indigenous religion in a way that Confucianism had not, and it was through language and mantra that this connection was made. Kukai helped to elucidate what mantra is in a way that had not been done before. He addresses the fundamental questions of what a text is, how signs function, and above all, what language is. In this, he covers some of the same ground as modern-day structuralists and other scholars of language, although he comes to very different conclusions. In this system of thought, all sounds are said to originate from ah, which is the short sound in father. For esoteric Buddhism, ah has a special function because it is associated with shunyata, or the idea that nothing exists in its own right, but is contingent upon causes and conditions. In Sanskrit, ah is a prefix which changes the meaning of a word into its opposite. So vidya is understanding and avidya is ignorance. The same arrangement is also found in many Greek words like atheism versus theism and apathy versus pathos. The letter A is both visualized in the Siddham script and pronounced in rituals and meditation practices. In the Mahavairottana Sutra, which is central to Shingon Buddhism, says, thanks to the original vows of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, a miraculous force resides in the mantras so that by pronouncing them one acquires a merit without limits. Wow! I can feel my spirit evolving as we learn all this new and important information. And there's more! A mantra is kujikiri in Shugendo. The word Shingon means mantra. According to Alex Wayman and Ryujun Tajima, Shingon means true speech, has the sense of an exact mantra which reveals the truth of the dharmas, and is the path of mantras. The practice of writing mantras and copying texts as a spiritual practice became very refined in Japan, and some of these are written in the Japanese script and Siddham script of Sanskrit, recited in either language. There are 13 mantras used in Shingon Buddhism, each dedicated to a major deity. The mantra for each deity name in Japanese, its equivalent name in Sanskrit, a transliteration of mantra, and the Japanese version in Shingon traditions are as follows. Mantrayana, or Sanskrit, which may be translated as Way of the Mantra, was the original self-identifying name of those who have come to be determined Nyingmapa. The Nyingmapa, which may be rendered as those of the ancient way, a name constructed due to the genesis of the Sharma, fresh, new traditions, Mantrayana has developed into a synonym of Vajrayana. Initially, according to Khans, like their fellow Indians, Buddhists used mantras as protective spells to ward off malign influences. Despite a Vinaya rule which forbids monks engaging in the Brahminical practice of chanting mantras for material gain, there is a number of protective mantras for a group of ascetic monks. However, even at this early stage, there is perhaps something more than animistic magic at work. Particularly in the case of the Ratana Sutta, the efficacy of the verses seems to be related to the concept of truth. Each verse of the sutta ends with, "By the virtue of this truth, may there be happiness." Khans notes that later mantras were used more to guard the spiritual life of the chanter, and sections on mantras began to be included in some Mahayana sutras, such as the White Lotus Sutra and the Lankavatara Sutra. The scope of protection also changed in this time. In the Sutra of Golden Light, the four great kings promised to exercise sovereignty over the different classes of demigods, to protect the whole of Jambudvipa, the Indian subcontinent, to protect monks who proclaim the sutra, and to protect kings who patronize the monks who proclaim the sutra. The apotheosis of this type of approach is the Nichiren school of Buddhism that was founded in the 13th century Japan, and which distilled many previously complex Buddhist practices down to the veneration of the Lotus Sutra through a recitation of the Daimoku Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which translates as homage to the Lotus Sutra. The third period began, according to Kans, in about the 7th century to take center stage and become a vehicle for salvation in their own right. Tantra started to gain more momentum in the 6th and 7th century, with specifically Buddhist forms appearing as early as 300 CE. Vajrayana was an early name for what is now more commonly known as Vajrayana, which gives us a hint as to the place of mantra in Indo-Tibetan Buddhism. The aim of Vajrayana practice is to give the practitioner a direct experience of reality, of things as they really are. Mantras function as symbols of that reality, and different mantras are different aspects of that reality. For example, wisdom or compassion. Mantras are often associated with a particular deity, one famous exception being the Prajnaparamita mantra, associated with the Heart Sutra. One of the key Vajrayana strategies for bringing about a direct experience of reality is to engage the entire psychophysical organism in the practices. In one Buddhist analysis, the person consists of body, speech, and mind. So a typical sadhana or meditation practice might include mudras or symbolic hand gestures, the recitations of mantras, as well as the visualization of celestial beings and visualizing the letters of the mantra, which is being cited. Clearly here, mantra is associated with speech. The mediator may visualize the letters in front of themselves or within their body. They may be pronounced out loud or internally in mind only. In the Sikh religion, a mantra or mantra is a sabad, meaning word or hymn, from the Adi Granth to concentrate the mind on God. Through repetition of the mantra and listening to one's own voice, thoughts are reduced and the mind rises above materialism to tune into the voice of God. Mantras in Sikhism are fundamentally different from the secret mantras used in other religions. Unlike in other religions, Sikh mantras are open for anyone to use. They are used openly and are not taught in secret sessions, but are used in front of assemblies of Sikhs. The most widely known mantra in the Sikh faith is Vaheguru. According to the Sikh poet Bhai Gurdas, the word Vaheguru is the Gur mantra, or the mantra given by the Guru, and eliminates ego. According to the 10th Sikh master Guru Gobind Singh, the Vaheguru mantra was given by God to the order of the Khalsa and reforms the apostate into the purified. There are mantras in Taoism, such as the words in Dafan Yinyu, Wu Liang Yin, and the Tibetan Buddhism mantra Om. There are mantras in Qiandoism, Daisan Jinriho, Zhong San Do, and Onmyo Do. Neuroscientists are beginning to quantify some of the health benefits of this ancient practice through the use of advanced neuroimaging tools. In a 2017 pilot study, activity in the default mode network was suppressed in a group practicing a mantra-based meditation, but not in a control group practicing tapping fingers on a 4-button keypad. The default mode network is a large-scale brain network, active during passive rest and mind wandering, and is the neurological basis for the self. And that's it! Everything you all need to know about mantras, their applications, and their uses. Why not come up with a mantra of your own? Joy and I have one. It's Namaste! Until the next quick Wisdom with Bliss. See you soon. Om. Now that's quick wisdom with Bliss. And that wraps up our learning for today's fascinating subject. I hope your spirit has grown as much as mine has. Please come see me anytime to discuss more spiritual ideas and heart-fulfilling concepts. What was that, Joy? You don't want them to leave? Aw, neither do I. Well, they can stay if they want to. Now, let's meditate on our next adventure. Om. Om.